Okay, Michael, if you're ready to go,
Absolutely, we can start.
we can. Welcome to Porter Press International. I'm Steve Clark, and I'm delighted to be joined by the author, photographer, collector and racer, Michael Kalibestein. Michael, welcome to us today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's a great honor.
Thank you. We're here to review your latest book, Superfinds, published by Porter Press. This for me is a truly unique book packed with unseen automobile images from the 1960s and 70s. But before we talk about the book, Michael, let's talk a little bit about you and your background.
Well, I was very fortunate to be involved with classic cars from early on. I mean, virtually from the moment I was holding my first matchbox in my hand, I was a collector. And I always collected the old ones, not the new ones.
Sure.
So I think it must have been starting from that day. And till this day, I'm involved in classic cars. I'm still an advisor for some collectors. And I'm fortunate enough to meet people who are in the business. And that's pretty much my life. It's collectors' cars.
Wonderful. So where did the inspiration come from to compile this book, Michael?
It happened by accident, but I have to say all my life, and that's 60 years already, I have been longing for an opportunity to do a book, a significant book about the beginning of the classic car scene. Because I mean, I still remember the 1970s, and of course many of you will do, when classic cars were pretty much a thing of the Queen's Gate News Place in London. All the big collectors were meeting there. I remember Danny Margulies, I remember Colin Creevy being there, and many other people, and there were not so many. So I always wanted to show what it was like in the day. And those photos gave me a big opportunity just to make to visualize what all this was about.
Sure. Just looking at the wonderful photographs that are in the book, they were found in the Italian villa, and they're a very important set of photographs also for the current owners of the cars. Tell us more about how you came to find them.
Well, I was really fortunate. I tripped over a cardboard box when I was rolling out a Ferrari Dino monoposto from a little garage in Bergamo. And while we were rolling this car out into the sunshine, I tripped over this box, and many photos, old prints, and even lots of negatives appeared. And I said to myself, oh, this is interesting. I have to keep this in mind. So we rolled the car out. Actually ran it in Bergamo. It was the Hawthorne Collins Berge von Trips.
Oh, well, yeah.
Monoposto. And I pushed Corrado down the hill. He actually started the car in the Bergamo village, and he goes bang! Like, it's just incredible noise. And he did a tour, came back, and we just sat down, and I came back to the photos and said, what about them? Can I have them? He said, yeah, take them. So I looked at them. Some were negatives. Said, oh, this is very important. And I decided to ask him if there were more. And there were more and more and more. So I had 12 trips to the house and found more and more photos all over. A very lucky incident.
Your perfect timing, I would guess. Tell us more about the gentleman who took the photographs.
Corrado Cupellini, he was certainly a finder. In the days in the early 60s, nobody seemed to care about vintage classic cars, early classic cars. And he was in the same league as Colin Creevy. He traveled everywhere to find a car. He went all over South America and of course Europe. He did everything. But he was not only a finder, he was a racer too. So he restored the cars, raced them for a couple of years, and then sold them off. And it's just amazing what he saw and what he found.
I mean, we're blessed to have those photographs. And I guess when you unearthed them, it must have been pretty emotional.
Very much so, Steve. The first photo I saw was 250 GTO, which was standing in his garage in the 1970s. I couldn't believe it. Mm. And there were even 3 photos of GTOs. And of course, the Alfa Tipo 33 Stradale. He owns 2 of the whole production run of, was it 5? He owned 3 Aston Martin DB4 Zagatos, and on and on and on. So I saw all these photos. Some were never developed. They were small Minolta prints.
Right.
So I had to buy the machines to virtually develop the negatives and see what comes up. And even Corrado said, wow, I can't remember finding this, but it looks very interesting.
Yeah, sure. I think the thing for me is that they're unscripted. They're just raw photographs, aren't they? And you know, as the garage doors were opened, there the cars were, and that's where the photographs were taken.
That's the big thing about this book. There was no artistic license or artistic purpose behind these photos. They were just made to just tell someone else, look, here's this car, what do you think about it? Shall we have it? Do you want to have it? It's just to have a registry, nothing else. But some of these photos they're magnificent, they're beautiful.
They are in their own right. They actually tell an incredibly good story. Just looking at the actual overall project, Michael, how long did it take you? I mean, it must have been an enormous task to even start to compile and choose these photos.
You see, Steve, in the beginning, I thought it was going to be easy. But when I looked in detail at some of the, let's say Ferraris, the early Ferraris, 212, 166, or whatever you come up with, they all had body changes very early on. So you can't really tell, was it a 166 Inter, or was it a 212, whatever it was, or 330, or whatever. And so it was quite tricky to find out what is lying in front of you. And I decided to virtually contact every big expert in the field, talk to them, mark expert. I mean, you have experts for one, not only for one brand, for one type of car. So it took me 3.5 years to get to terms with all these photos. But it was done, and of course, Philip helped a lot. Many experts helped, and they were quite happy to do so.
I mean, it is in its own right a spectacular book, not only in content, but in actual size. Did you ever think of putting it into 2 volumes?
Steve, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was more content for at least 200 more pages, but we decided to have only the best, only the most significant cars. Of course, there were a lot of Mercedes and whatever, American cars even, finds that came along in Argentina, in Montevideo, in Uruguay, wherever. But we found we should distill it all to sports and race cars. And that's what we did.
Okay. When people buy this book, they'll find that you've divided into 4 segments: the cars, the engine, the cockpits, and the final bit is the Thomas Sumner collection. Yes. Quite interesting way of dividing it up. Did that make it easier?
It made it more interesting from my point of view. I mean, just showing cars from beginning to end would be a bit boring. And I love engines, and I love in particular the very extreme race engines of the 1930s, 1950s, Maseratis, Ferraris, Alfa Romeos, the big ones. And I found so many engine shots. So I wanted to show everybody, look, that's what an engine looked like in the day. And even the cockpits. I mean, I'm a great admirer of racing cockpits. And that was the intention, to show people, look how used, how simple, how beautiful cockpits were in those days.
Okay. Just looking at the other parts of it, what was your favorite find and why?
In the book, of course, it was the short wheelbase Competizione sitting on the rooftop at Monaco station.
Yeah.
It's quite unbelievable because the car came from Peru via rail and ship, and it ended up being in Monaco, and Corrado decided to put it on the rooftop with a machine because he wanted to go sailing in the Mediterranean, so he didn't have time to pick it up. So he left it on the rooftop until he came back, then he took it down.
You couldn't make that up, could you, really?
Today it's probably a 16, 17 million car, but wow. in period nobody really cared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now the book is done and published. What does it mean to you?
It means a lot. I mean, the photos obviously, and that's the response I'm having. Many people, collectors, owners, even the experts come back and say, this is really interesting. It gives a lot of doubts about the history of cars, but it also confirms a lot of histories. So it's a little bit of both. Why was this car there at the moment of time? What happened to it afterwards? So quite a few historians came back to me and said, do you have more information? And where exactly it was, and so on and so forth. So there's a new sort of exchange going on, and many people will be surprised what their cars actually looked like 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Had you, a bit of a leading question, from what you said there, had you thought about doing a future where are they now type of book, bringing it back to present owners and what the actual vehicles look like now?
We were shortly thinking about that. That's right, Steve. But as you know, nowadays there might be 2 or 3 cars having the same chassis number, and you get into a lot of trouble maintaining a position in this game. So we really, it's not our task to get involved into that. We just show what Corrado Cupellini has found or what was offered to him, and then it's up to the historians to find out more about the backgrounds.
Just completely change of subject. Your favorite motorsport author and book?
There are several, of course. I love Philip Porter's E-types and D-types books. I mean, it's just magnificent what he has done. I grew up with Sedgwick, who did a magnificent book, Motoring My Way. So that was always on the shelf for me. And of course, I liked Alan Clark's book, Backfire.
Yeah.
They were really nice books, and they were pretty much the beginning of it all for me.
Okay. You mentioned in a previous conversation that you'd worked alongside our former director, Alan Wynne. How did that happen?
Oh yes, Alan, he's a wonderful personality. I was extremely fortunate to find the multi-union in Wales. That's been 15 years ago, I think. And it's the second fastest car in Brooklands, and driven by Chris Daniland in the days. It was designed after the W125 Mercedes, but inside it was an Alfa P3. So I was always chasing this car with a friend of mine, and we were having a lead into South Wales. Sorry, my accent. And we actually found the multi-union.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's why I was in touch with Alan, because I asked him, can this be, is it the real one, and so on and so forth. Of course, it was a complicated story. As
I guess most of them are. Michael, just going back onto the sections of the book, the final one with the Thomas Sumner collection, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I have to be very grateful to Mr. Thomas Sumner, because when I started the project, I ran out of money. Doing a almost 430 pages big book, researching, traveling, doing everything, and the printing was extremely expensive. So I asked him, can you be of any help? We have to do this book, it's so important. And he said, okay, Michael, we've been good friends. So he helped me in financial terms, but also as a good friend. So that was very important. Without him, we couldn't have done the book, actually.
It's very difficult. I think it's very difficult. I mean, I've been mesmerized by the book, I have to say, because each time you turn the page, you think, wow. And, you know, you just study it. And it is, I think, a treat for, in fact, interested in automobiles, cars, but also in photography. Although they're not stage managed, they are beautiful.
But it was very hard to get a storyline in there. I mean, you start to get boring after 100 pages of old cars sitting in scrapyards and all, and so on and so forth. So I tried to introduce a human side as well. And luckily we found a lot of photos of Corrado Cupellini climbing fences in the 1960s and meeting friends. So you get a feel for what they were like, what they were, you know, how they were behaving, and how it was all done.
Yeah, but you know, you see those cars just left in the scrap yard or broken down beside the road. It would, you know, you cannot imagine that now, can you? In terms of the value, but they didn't value it, I guess, in the way that people do today.
I think it still happens, Steve. It's still possible, but of course, not like in the 1960s. And the Italians absolutely went crazy for the book because they said that's most of our national heritage.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And even all the you know, the bodybuilders, les grands carrosseries, they're all in there with cars most people haven't seen before. So in Italy, it's already book of the year, and they really love every page of it.
Yeah, I can understand why. And the other thing you quite rightly say is that, you know, chassis had different bodies on throughout their lives, either through an accident or, you know, rebodied in the latest style, which again is absolutely fascinating, the diversity to which they went to.
Yeah, I mean, it took me at least 6 months to find out a certain coupe in the book was actually a barchetta, and they put a rooftop on it. A 500 Mondial Ferrari with a roof. So someone had the great idea to make a coupe.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of experts and you know, detailed looking into it to find out what it was and what chassis number it was. So went on from there.
Fantastic. Just remind everyone, the book is available from Porter Press, and of course other good resellers are available. I have to say that anyone who's lucky enough to buy this book is in for an absolute treat. It's a wonderful book that you can pick up, put down, keep going back to it. And I've looked through it so many times, and each time I look through it, I see something different, Michael. And I think that's a testament to what a fantastic book it is.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time today, and I wish you every success with the book.
Thank you.
Thank you.